So I'm just wondering if you can show your hands if you've ever been present at a funeral or with the death of a friend and used the 23rd Psalm. How many of us learned the 23rd Psalm as a child? How many of us learned it using the King James Version of the Psalm? Lots of hands in this room. For those of us who are new to the Episcopal tradition, the fourth Sunday of Easter is always the Good Shepherd Sunday. And so you may have heard a little theme running through our lessons. And none more so than the 23rd Psalm, which has been the grounding of prayer and song and sustenance for many of us our whole lives long. The 23rd Psalm is in our bones. Some of us have had prayer cards with the 23rd Psalm on it. Some of us have had plaques in our kitchens or in our bedrooms. The 23rd Psalm has been a balm and a strength and a comfort. But sometimes I think because it is so familiar, we don't hear how radical it is. The Lord is my shepherd. In the ancient world, shepherd was a metaphor for kings. And it's not just only in Israel that you hear the shepherd word used to describe the king or God. In the Code of Hammurabi, the king is the shepherd. It is a radical claim for Israel to say, there is not an earthly king that is our king. Our king is Yahweh. The Lord is my shepherd. That means Caesar is not my shepherd, if you're at the time of Jesus. It means party is not my shepherd. It means white people are not my shepherd. The United States, not my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. A radical claim from the jump. The psalmist, the poet, is not done there. I'll not be in want. A different translation of this is I will lack nothing. I lack nothing. What a radical claim that is. How would we live differently if in our bone of bone and heart of hearts, we could say with assurance, I lack nothing? Our whole economy is predicated on us needing stuff. A consumer economy is grounded on needing things and insecurity. But like the church in Acts, the psalmist is convinced that I lack nothing. God is my shepherd, and I lack no thing. Such a claim, such a description of God who is present and strong. He makes me to lie down in green pastures and leads me by quiet waters. I want us to imagine Palestine and Israel kind of like West Texas. Think about trying to find grass in the midst of drought for your cattle in West Texas, and it's not dissimilar for shepherds trying to find grass for sheep in Israel or Palestine. Then it was a matter of going from place to place. Now it's also a matter of growth and expansion and political turmoil for Bedouins trying to find pasture and water and the rights to water. This is an image of being on the move. You don't get to just be in a place and settle into green grass and water. The psalmist knows that God is going to move and God is going to provide and God will lead us into that path. And that path, as we know it from the King James, is into the valley of the shadow of death. I don't know about you, but when I was like 5 and memorizing this, I was terrified by going into the valley of the shadow of death. And I couldn't hear the fear no evil part because I was scared, almost S-less, right? That wouldn't have been the way I described it when I was 5 years old. As an adult, I would say that. Going into the valley of the shadow of death, again, is that King James language. But it can also be translated as the dark place. I know lots of dark places. My hunch is some of us are in those dark places this morning as we're gathering together. The dark place of burnout, the dark place of unemployment, the dark place of marginalization because of our lack of legal status or because we're trans, the dark place of depression or anxiety or of loneliness or of aging or of sickness. You name it, we've had dark places. God is there. The shepherd is in the dark place. And like the angels before him, the psalmist can say, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. This is powerful because just like our culture is contingent upon us needing and wanting stuff, the rhetoric now is all geared toward fear. We're to be afraid of them, afraid there's not going to be enough, afraid for our children that somehow they are going to be totally lost, afraid for our elders because of the burden that they're going to be to us, afraid of being old because there may be nobody to care for us. Be afraid, be very afraid, we hear. But not from the psalmist. The psalmist says, I will not be afraid. And the movement in this poem at this point goes from describing God as shepherd to calling on God as shepherd. You are with me. You are with me. You are with me. This is not a God who is far off and aloof or a concept. This is a God who knows us by name and is with us. And because of that promise and that commitment, we will not be afraid. That is powerful, y'all. For us to be able to claim God and to not be afraid and to trust that we will have everything we need means we may be sad and anxious and depressed and fearful, but we will not give in to the fear because God is with us. God's presence comforts us. This vision that the poet has is one that is not just for the future by and by. In fact, the language of having everything we need would have rung to the Jewish audience that was singing this hymn as a reminder of God's continuing presence in the Exodus as they wandered for 40 years and in the exile as they came home to rebuild a new country and a new place. In both of those times historically, God reminded the people, you have everything you need. This is important for us. It's important for us to be able to remember our history because that's our history. God could provide for 40 years everything the children of Israel needed. God could rebuild a completely destroyed Jerusalem and was enough. And as we sit in the midst of a political time that is filled with strife and uncertainty, as we're living into climate change that scares us, and especially those of us who are young, and as we live with gun violence and children who are gripped with depression and anxiety, it is important for us to remember that God is with us in the midst of those things. We have everything we need, and we shall not be in want now. This vision of the banquet that is provided, this table, is not envisioned by the psalmist as something you're going to enjoy in the sweet by and by. We're not talking pearly gates and streets of gold. The table is set now. God's love and mercy don't just follow. The other rendition of that verb is that they pursue us. God's love and mercy pursue us. So often in the Psalms, that verb is used to describe enemies. You're tracked down by your enemies, and that's the way it feels a lot of the time. But today, in this psalm that is in our bones and in our hearts, we are reminded that God's love and mercy is pursuing us. It's going after us. It claims us. This is so important spiritually because times can feel dark. We can feel alone. But we have everything we need. And God's love and mercy pursue us, and there is feasting. What a powerful message to have in our bones and in our heart of hearts. Rather than being just a song for funerals, the 23rd Psalm is a balm. It's called a trust psalm by biblical scholars. It's a type of psalm. We might have trust and confidence. And so we sing it on this fourth Sunday of Easter because we have trust. We have confidence. God is our shepherd. We have everything we need. We can walk into the dark valley, the dark place, because God is with us and we will fear no evil. Amen.